Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking some time out of your day. My name is Jeff Rogan. I'm the Vice President of Member Experience here at the ARA. Today, we're going to be covering load securement and lift equipment safety, uh, really focusing on improving the safety for the rental operations, the employees, and the customers. Today, we have with us Gina Holt, our Senior Director of Educational Strategy, and Sean Willich, our Safety Training Manager. They're going to walk us through some of the key topics, including operational preparedness, personal protective equipment, and other best practices for loading, securing, and unloading the equipment. We'll also be covering some pre-driving safety checklists, defensive driving, and accident procedures to ensure a comprehensive understanding of the safety measures. With that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Sean to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Just as Jeff said here, my name is Sean Willick. I'm the Safety Training Manager at ARA. I've been with ARA for going on 3 years now. And I have around 7 years of experience in product safety, quality inspections, and occupational health and safety. And I'll kick it over to Gina to kind of give her introduction as well. Gina, you still there? You may have lost Gina.
She's muted.
Gina, go ahead and unmute your computer screen. Oh no.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. Can you hear us?
All right.
Perfect.
Well, I have a bit of an echo, so I'll try to get through this. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. As Jeff mentioned, I am the Senior Director of Educational Strategy, and I've been with the ARA now for about 2 months. Happy to be here. I've got 20 plus years of experience in the safety arena, leadership, as heavy equipment and transportation and otherwise. With that, we look forward to this conversation. I'll turn it back over to you, Sean.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina. So moving through here today, we have some best practices, some different topics we're gonna cover with you guys. Operational preparedness, preparing for the loading, driving, and unloading. We really just want to, touch on, a pretty wide variety of topics here. There's been some pretty severe accidents that have happened in the industry recently. We just want to, help better prepare our members, for the practices of unloading and operational preparedness and these types of topics. So go ahead, move on through here. So the first topic we're going to cover is personal protective equipment, or PPE. Everybody's, a lot, or at least most people should be familiar with PPE, especially in our industry. The thing about personal protective equipment is that it's going to be dictated by the hazards in the situation that you're in, right? People oftentimes ask me like, well, what PPE do I need to do X, Y, or Z job? And my response is usually, well, what hazards are present while you're doing X, Y, or Z job, right? That's going to determine what PPE that you need to, use. In order to determine those hazards, oftentimes you need to do something like a job hazard analysis or a worksite hazard assessment, or one of these different types of inspections or safety checks to determine what jobs or what hazards are on the jobs and what PPE and what other controls are going to be necessary to safely do those things. But what I can say is there's some pretty common PPE that you or your employees should have, especially in our industry. And, work boots. Typically, I like to say hard-toed safety shoes of some sort, right? Whether it be a steel-toed boot or a composite toe is really up to you. But having a good, solid work boot, not operating equipment flip-flops, it's a good idea, right? To have a good, solid work shoe. Gloves. This is another one, especially when you're dealing with things that could have pinch points or various different things. Having a impact resistant or a cut resistant general duty work glove is always a good idea. Having safety glasses, especially when there's a chance of having flying debris or particulates that could cause vision obstructions or any sort of flying matter. It's a good idea to have safety glasses, hard hats. This is great for if you're going to be in a lift or if you're going to be lifting things overhead. Having a hard hat can be, I've seen accidents happen where had the person be wearing a hard hat, it would have just been a bump on the noggin, but now they're going to get stitches, right? You'd be surprised the amount of force that some of the equipment that we operate can generate, even though they don't look like they're moving very fast. So having a hard hat is a good idea. Reflective vests. This is especially important when you are in high traffic areas and roadways. You want to have high visibility, right? The last thing you want to see is somebody in another piece of equipment or somebody dragging, a vehicle, not be able to see you. So having a high visibility vest, a highly reflective vest is in my opinion, it is a must, especially for loading and unloading equipment. Hearing protection, that's going to be very situational, whether or not it's you're in a high hearing a high noise area. If you're in a high noise area, yes, hearing protection. If you're not, you don't necessarily need it, but it's always good to have it on hand. And then finally, PFPE, personal fall protection equipment. If you're unloading a boom lift or a scissor lift, you're going to want to make sure you have PFPE on hand. I've seen it all too often where drivers will unload things and they don't have it, and it's a requirement on certain pieces of equipment. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit later on, but that is some pretty standard PPE that we have or that we recommend. Additional supplies, reflective triangles, traffic cones, fire extinguishers. With reflective triangles and traffic cones, those two kind of go hand in hand. I've also seen people buy like puck lights and they'll put them out on roadways just to identify or just to define their work area. This is to keep others away from you, right? If you don't have a defined work area, people might not know where you're going or where you're going to be operating. So having a defined work area that's outlined by cones, by traffic, by reflective triangles, by the puck lights that flash, all of those things are good steps to help define your work area and keep people out of it. Fire extinguishers, those should be on every truck and in certain pieces of equipment, obviously. Don't really have to get into too much explanation as to what those are used for, but in the event of a fire, you're going to want to have a fire extinguisher. Accident reporting steps. This is important. Having a checklist if there is an accident, what to do, right? If you have a new driver who maybe has experience driving and delivering, but doesn't have experience with your guys' standard operating procedures, you can run into a situation where he doesn't know what to do in the event of an accident. So you're going to want to make sure that those are defined on a list, and that list is either with the driver, I would hope physically on a piece of paper or maybe even electronically, but having an accident, the step, the SOP, whatever you want to call it, the checklist for accident reporting, you want to make sure you have that on hand. First aid kits, those are awesome to have. I recommend a first aid kit that it's not just Band-Aids, antibiotic ointment and some aspirin. Get a ANSI approved first aid kit. They have a little bit more, they're a little more expensive, but they also have a little bit more stuff in there. And make sure your people are trained to use the contents of that first aid kit. First aid kits can save your life, but also there can be things in some first aid kits like tourniquets and things that can also be dangerous. So you want to make sure that whatever they have, that they're trained on how to use it properly. Daily inspection checklist, that's going to be something you're going to want to have on hand at all times. You're going to want to make sure you have that for the truck, for the equipment, for the trailer, that they know exactly what they need to inspect and to make sure that their rig is good to go. And then obviously anything to do with DOT, insurance, registration, mile logs, hour logs, those are going to be things that you're going to want to make sure that those are in place and that your people have access to and they know how to use them. Moving on here. Preparing for the load. So gross vehicle weight. Let's just talk about GVWR. You want to make sure that whatever equipment you're putting on your truck or trailer, that you are not exceeding your gross vehicle weight rating. Every piece of every vehicle has one. You want to make sure you know what it is and that you're not overloading it. An overloaded vehicle is an incredibly dangerous vehicle. So we want to make sure that we are following that gross vehicle weight rating. You want to ensure proper weight distribution. This is important, especially when you're talking about driving. If you have, improper weight distribution and you take a corner, even if you're following at a safe speed and you take a corner or a turn or a bend in the road, you could potentially have a tip over situation because you're unevenly distributed. So you want to make sure whatever it is that you're loading, that you evenly distribute the weight as best you can, right? Obviously, you want to make sure that your vehicle and trailer that the beds are free of debris, oil, ice, anything that could cause an unnecessary hazard. You want to make sure that our stuff is clean, it's in good condition. When you're loading trailers and truck beds for that matter, make sure that you are inspecting the surface, right? I've seen the back end of a forklift go through the bottom of a trailer before because it was not inspected prior to loading and unloading. They can fall through and they can cause damage. And you want to make sure that before you start loading that trailer or that truck or that box truck or whatever it is you're loading, that you go through and you make sure that that area in which you're driving onto is in good condition. And then finally, you want to make sure that as you're loading on firm, level ground and you're free of obstacles. You don't want to create unnecessary hazards. And by loading onto unfirm, unlevel, or areas where there are just unnecessary obstacles, you're creating additional hazards that frankly don't need to be there. So you want to make sure you can control what you can control, and that's something that you can do your best to control.
Here's how to install it. And
moving on, loading. So some best practices here when you're loading, when you're getting onto and off of equipment or trailers or whatever it might be, always use 3 points of contact facing the machine. All too often I see people hop onto and hop off of machines. And depending on the situations and circumstances, you can potentially have injuries occur during those times. Especially hopping off of machines. Even if you're using 3 points of contact, if you're facing away from the machine, you can still put yourself in a situation where you can cause undue harm or injury. If you slip, fall, you could hit your head, you could injure your shoulder, you could do all sorts of things. So you want to make sure you're utilizing 3 points of contact when you're getting onto and off of, and also, obviously facing the machine. Center and secure your equipment. This kind of goes back to the even weight distribution. You want to make sure that you're not canted off to one side or the other when you are loading equipment. You want to try to be as centered as you can get it. And again, that just goes back to that even weight distribution. Avoid driving scissorless from the platform. If you can, pull the controls down, and there's usually a coiled cord that you can literally pull it and you can operate scissorless from the ground. When you're loading scissorless on trailers, that is the optimal way to load them. Scissor are great on flat surfaces. They're not so great when you get onto angles, when you get onto pitched surfaces. So you want to make sure that you're operating those safely, and it's better to load those on the trailers from the side of them. Set parking brake, lower attachments, secure doors. These are all just things, follow the manufacturer's instructions is really what this goes down to. But you don't want things that can slew or attachments that can come off or doors that can fly open while you're in transit. So you want to make sure all of those things are secured properly. Securing the load, use the manufacturer provided attachment points. And just to go a step further, your safety and operations manual is going to be the #1 resource when it comes to securing your pieces of equipment. The manufacturer knows exactly how they want you to secure that equipment, and I recommend that you follow their steps, right? That being said, when it comes to DOT regulations, now state by state might be different. DOT regulations can be a little different depending on where you're at. But from a federal standpoint, you want to make sure all your attachments are fully lowered. You want to make sure you maintain a legal height of your load. If you are oversized, you need to make sure that you are, adequately signing that. And there are different,
All the spiders were born.
Are they dry?
But there are different flagging options that you can follow, and there's different rules and regulations that you need to do for oversized loads. And ultimately, the big thing here is you're only as strong as your weakest link. So you want to make sure you're using appropriate chains, binders, and straps. If you are, hauling a 25,000 pound piece of equipment, and you're using a 300-pound ratchet strap, that's probably not okay, right? You probably need to make sure that you are using something that's a little beefier, a little stronger, and that is capable of securing that equipment. Trying to think, circle of safety. So this is a pretty easy one here. Circle of safety. So we want to make sure that we are, maintaining 360 as we are loading and unloading things. We want to make sure that we are looking for obstacles when we are going to load things. We want to make sure that we are checking for load securement. We're inspecting the critical areas of the vehicle and the trailers. And we need to do this as many times as necessary to ensure that everything is good before we hit the. But for that, I'm going to turn it over to Gina.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, give me just a second here. All right, thank you so much, Rashawn. You touched on several important components regarding load securement and lift equipment safety, and also the circle of safety. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other parts of the journey as a driver. Once your load is properly secured, the next step is keeping both it and you safe on the load. How you handle your vehicle behind the wheel has a direct impact on safety, efficiency, and the integrity of the equipment you're transporting. Driving a heavy truck with equipment requires focus, planning, defensive driving techniques to prevent accidents and also to protect cargo. So let's look into some of that. Pre-driving safety checks. So of course, you also always want to perform a 360-degree walk around. You'll hear this several times throughout the rest of the presentation. During that walk around, you want to inspect your truck, trailer, load, look for damage, leaks, loose chains or straps, and any other obstacles that could prevent you from transporting your load safely. You want to confirm in advance, plan your route with your dispatch, confirm the roads you plan to take, check clearances, weight restrictions in advance of the trip, so you don't have to make any last minute adjustments or rush. You want to check your critical systems. So ensure your mirrors, your brakes, your seat belts, lights, everything is in good working order before you proceed. So then once you're on the road, sorry, I'm going a little bit ahead of you, Sean.
Okay.
Once you're on the road, you want to maintain a safe following distance. So this will allow for extra space for braking, especially when you're hauling heavy equipment. The heavier the load, the longer it's going to take you to stop the vehicle. You want to control your speed and adjust your speed for the amount of weight you're carrying, different road conditions, bad weather, and also traffic flow. You want to stay alert and minimize distractions. Signal early and check mirrors and account for trailer swing and blind spots. And continue to monitor your load securement. Use your mirrors and watch for shifting and listen for unusual noises while you're driving so you can determine if the load is shifting or not. And let me just back up to staying alert. One of the most number one reasons for distracted driving is cell phone usage. So again, avoid cell phone use when possible and focus on changing traffic and road conditions. Next slide, Sean. All right, defensive driving. You want to avoid high-risk situations at all costs, such as poor visibility, unstable roads, or any kind of heavy traffic with pedestrian heavy traffic, especially. You want to try and anticipate other motorists because you can never predict what they'll do. You have to expect sudden lane changes, slowdowns, or any kind of unexpected movement from other motorists. Check your clearances. Make sure you keep space on all sides to allow time and room to react depending on what the other motorists do. You want to maximize your mirror usage. So check your mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds so that you can stay aware of any potential blind spots, as well as the proximity of the surrounding traffic. Communicate clearly. You want to signal way in advance when possible for any lane changes or turns, and if necessary, use your headlights and horns to alert other drivers to your movements. And then lastly, adjust again for your conditions. Slow down in poor weather, slow down in heavy traffic, and slow down especially when you're approaching construction zones. And here we are now back to school, so school zones. Next slide. Okay. Backing up, parking, tight spots, all of these present challenges. So choose safe locations to park. Where possible, park in a well-lit and designated area for trucks. Stay away from heavy traffic if possible. Level ground matters. Make sure you park on a flat, stable surface. Adjust carriages as necessary so that you can prevent the possibility of trailer movement or shifting. Of course, set your parking brakes and use your chalks. Always engage the parking brakes and chalks when required. Mind your surroundings. Make sure you check, especially when you're operating aerial lifts. Check for overhead hazards, check for pedestrians, check for other vehicles in the areas. And then when you're backing into a parking spot, to reduce the likelihood of an incident. Your field of vision is usually much better when you're able to pull out of a parking spot versus having to back out of a parking spot. And then this is where you want to use a spotter in tight areas or when you have these blind spots in order to prevent collisions. Next slide. Okay. Safe equipment operation. First and foremost, as Sean mentioned earlier, follow the manufacturer's recommendations for safe unloading procedures. Okay. Then you want to go ahead and conduct your pre-use inspection. So check for your tires, your controls, guardrails, your harness anchor points when you're operating, MUPs, and any safety devices. Wear your recommended fall protection, as Sean mentioned earlier. So always wear your harness and only connect to approved anchor points, as well as ensure that you are properly trained and certified in operating a MUP. Okay. Stability awareness. Again, avoid unloading on soft ground, uneven surfaces, and absolutely do not exceed your load capacity. Maintaining proper clearances. Make sure you stay away at least 10 feet from overhead power lines and other overhead hazards such as building overhangs. Operate at safe speeds. Make sure you move slowly, especially if you're in an aerial lift and you're at an elevated level. Make sure you move slowly, and also when you're in congested areas. Okay. Never, ever, ever override safety devices. They're there for your protection. Bypassing safety features is dangerous, and it puts the operator, coworkers, and the property at risk. And lastly, always look in the direction of travel. So keep your eyes on the path ahead in order to avoid collisions, any obstacles, and even pedestrians. Next slide. Unloading. Follow work zone and site-specific safety rules. Inspect the area first. So as we spoke earlier, ensure your load is on level, stable ground, clear of overhead hazards, debris, and traffic. Okay. Secure the vehicle adjust and align equipment to avoid rollovers, and maintain a low center of gravity. So you want to ensure the load is fully supported and won't shift at any time during the unloading process. And then lastly, use a spotter and communicate. Use a spotter if available, and use clear communication such as hand signals or any audio devices such as radios as needed. Next slide. And in the unforeseen event of an accident, make sure you understand what your accident procedures are. So stop immediately and ensure safety first. For example, if you're on the road, stop, set your brakes, employ your hazard lights, check for any injuries, call for assistance. So call emergency services first and then notify your dispatch. Secure the scene, turn on your flashes, and deploy emergency warning devices. So you want to use your cones, your flares, triangles, any other devices that you may have so that you can warn other motorists in the areas and prevent any potential collisions. And then lastly, notify authorities and your supervisor, as well as document the scene by following your company procedures. So your company may require you to take photos, witness information, complete an incident report, and go from there. So some key takeaways are: always know your circle of safety. Again, situational awareness is your first line of defense. Inspect and secure equipment as needed. So that's your truck, your trailer, your load. Everything must be fully checked and secured before moving. Drive defensively. Anticipate hazards. Maintain enough space between you and the other motorists. And stay alert. Keep your head on a swivel. Use safe practices for maneuvering. There are a lot of narrow spaces you have to be very, very careful with when you're backing up, and when you're parking. These are the areas that you want to take extra care and be extra vigilant, because typically that's where you see a lot of incidents. And then also follow proper protocols for equipment and emergency. So again, follow your accident procedures because they will protect you, others around you, as well as your cargo. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jeff.
All right, great. Thanks, Sean and Gina, for that the presentation there. We will be doing some Q&A, so if you have questions, feel free to either put them into chat or let us know. We can certainly take those. Just a couple right off the bat. Gina, if somebody's looking for additional resources, what's available in Rental U for them around this topic?
Oh, sorry, Jeff. Finally found that darn mute button. That's a great question. We have so many resources available on Rental U. The one that comes to mind would be the PDEP. That's a mouthful. It's our professional driver education program. That program covers all areas of drivers' daily responsibilities specific to equipment rental industry, such as defensive driving techniques, industry best practices and safety, and even customer service. And the goal of the program is to reduce the number of vehicle incidents annually in order to make sure our drivers are properly prepared.
Is there a website for that, or someplace we need to go look at that?
There is. I can throw that into the chat as well.
Perfect.
Another question, Sean, you talked a lot about, the different things when you're loading, kind of getting everything prepared. When does a CDL become a requirement versus not needing a CDL?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, there's a lot of different situations in which a CDL could be required. There's some situations where you would think it'd be required and it's not. We've actually done a few different webinars on this topic. On rental you, they're called, do I need a CDL? Are you sure? And do you drive a commercial motor vehicle? Are you sure? These topics are, they can be very confusing for folks. But what I can say is, what's going to be a big determining factor is going to be overall weight of your vehicle. How much does your vehicle weigh? How much does it weigh in combination? So your truck plus your trailer plus your load, right? How much, how far or where are you traveling? Are you traveling in state? Are you traveling out of state? Are you transporting placable amounts of hazardous materials? How much, are you transporting a bunch of propane heaters, for an event that's outside, or are you transporting a tank of diesel? Like these are all going to be things you need to ask yourself. But what I would recommend everybody do is go and watch the Do I Need a CDL and Do I Operate a Commercial Motor Vehicle webinars. Kevin Gurn, our Vice President of Government Affairs, does an excellent job going through those. And he really does an excellent job of breaking those down in a digestible way. And also, we have available to all members on Rental Management's website a CDL flowchart, where basically it asks you a series of questions, and based on if you say yes or no, it'll tell you what type of CDL you may need or not. Big question there, but yeah, it's going to come down to weight, distance, where you're going, and a few other factors.
Okay, great. Are there other questions that anybody has for Sean, Gina, or myself? If so, make sure you take yourself off of mute or enter it into the chat, and we can certainly take those. Don't see anything coming in through chat. If you do have questions after the call, feel free to shoot them. Sean and Gino, would you guys be able to put your email addresses into the chat? That way, if somebody has a specific question, they can ask offline.
Sure thing.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank both Sean and Gina for sharing their insights with us today, and for everybody for jumping on the call. We will be sending this out along with some other resources for you around the rental U. We will link the article for the CDL flowchart, so you have that as well. But as always, whether it's Sean, Gina, myself, anybody on the ARA staff, always willing to take your call, help answer your questions, guide you in the right path. So with that, if there's nothing else, Sean and Gina, thank you so much again, and thanks everybody for joining the call today. Have a wonderful day.